everyone, it's Linda from LyndaCreates, and today I have a fun project that I did as part of my Stitch Your Stamp series, and I'm using this stamp called Spring Sprigs by scrapbook.com, and I stitched it onto a thrifted denim jacket, and it's a child size one. It turned out really well, but it was a bit of an adventure doing this. I did it while I was camping, but it was really fun. I did 5 different stitches in there. So let's go ahead and check out how I made this. So I'm using this Spring Sprigs stamp from scrapbook.com, and it had all these cute little flowers on it. And I'm also doing something a little different. I'm doing a Stitch Your Stamp, but I'm going to be doing it a little bit differently. I am actually using the sticky Fabri-Solvi, and it is a printable material that you could actually run it through your printer, print onto it, and your pattern will be on it, and then you could stitch right onto your fabric, and then it dissolves. It's like amazing. But because I'm stamping, here's what I'm doing, and my setup looks a little strange. First off, this is the Sulky sticky Fabri-Solvi, and I have the rough texture on top. That looks really funny. I have just a scrap envelope here. It's junk mail, and I just needed something to catch the ink when I stamp. And what I did was I stamped the pattern that I wanted onto a piece of scrap paper. So I tested the design where I wanted everything, and so that is underneath there. So now I know where I want my stamps. So like I said, oh, and the thing is, the reason this is on the bottom is because I have them running off the bottom, so I don't want the whole stem on there. I could cut it off, but I'm trying to save every little bit of the Fabri-Solvi, so for future use. So this stamp set has some really cute and pretty plant drawings. I wanted to use as many of them as I could. Didn't use all of them. This Fabri-Solvi is taking these stamps beautifully. So as you can see, the plan was to do it kind of in a curve. The only reason I have this down here is to catch the overstamp. I wanted to save or be conservative with the Fabri-Solvi. So I did it right on the edge, and I'll just cut it out and stick it down. Okay, so there's that. So obviously I can't use this piece to run through the printer, so this will be my hand stamped or hand drawing piece. This is what I'm going to use on the project. I'm glamping right now. I'm in a campground. I'm in my RV at the moment, but I'm doing my stitching onto this jacket. It's a denim jacket that I thrifted. And I already showed you how I stamped this onto the Sulky water-soluble transfer. And what I'm going to do to start, I'm going to cut away any of the excess material here, because the more you have, the more it's going to, you're going to have to remove later. These are the colors I'm planning to use. I don't use too many purples, so I thought this is a perfect project to do purple flowers. So now I'm going to remove the backing and I'm going to stick it down onto this pre-washed denim jacket. I'm going to peel off the backing. So you can see the backing is just coming away, and so that's when you print or stamp on this material, you want to print or stamp on the textured side, and the blank side or smooth side is the carrier film. So that's sticking these stick and stitch. I'm going to just start on the left hand side here. I'm not planning on anything fancy. It's just, I'm just going to do some slow stitching. It is kind of a cold day here in the campsite. I have the electric fire on and trying to decide what kind of stitch I'm going to do. I'm starting off with a lazy daisy stitch. Okay. But then I'm going to turn it into a blanket stitch. So the difference being that it doesn't, just trying to make it so that you could see it. The difference being that it doesn't end at the bottom, it ends at the top. And I highly recommend, if you're doing an article of clothing, you should wash it first before you start stitching. Again, if it looks a little awkward, it's because I'm out here working a little bit, and I can't even say I'm roughing it because I'm sitting in a nice cozy RV, but I don't have my regular studio setup. But it seemed like the perfect little project to work on. I think it's National Embroidery Month. February is National Embroidery Month. So I'm starting a new petal. So each new petal is going to be like, again, a lazy daisy stitch, which is just the start of it. And then from there, it's a close blanket stitch. And if you ever want to see instructions or a diagram on how to do any of the stitches I demonstrate in one of my videos, you can go to my website at LyndaCreates.com, Lynda, and I have a diagram drawn to show how to do the stitch. But I try to keep them just a handful of stitches and keep them fairly easy. And another thing too is this jacket is a little awkward to maneuver. My needle puller. Once you do the last stitch on that petal, you just catch that end and you come up and again do another lazy daisy stitch in the next petal. I'll turn the camera around so you can see the view that I have out here. So that is the view out of the side window from our RV. Finished the first flower. This next one I'm doing it in a little bit dustier pinky color, but I'm just going to do 3 lazy daisy stitches. I have to say the denim is making it a little challenging in that because of the thickness, because there's at least 2 layers of the denim that I'm working through. on this yoke. So I'm going to start on this flower next. I'm going to again do some lazy daisy stitches for this because they are so tiny. The thing though is, because I'm sewing on the back or stitching on the back of the label as well, it's going to get really thick. So we'll see how that works out. Let's do this. I am almost done stitching this last flower here. I know the stamp had 7 flowers, but I'm only putting in 6, partially because going over this label part and the yoke and the just layers and layers of denim and such, it has been really difficult. Not the stitch or the design or the this water soluble material is wonderful. It is literally stitching through so much denim. I'm mainly concerned up here because it is so thick. When I get down to this part, it's very easy actually, and I enjoyed that. It's just this. So anyway, so that's why I'm only doing 6 flowers instead of 7. So these little flowers, they're just like round balls. I'm just going to do some fairly large French knots. I have 3 strands of floss, but I'm going to do 4 wraps. Let's see what size we get. Because oh, that's nice. It looks like a little flower right there. So these petals are nice, big and wide. So I'm going to do the same stitch that I did over here, the modified blanket stitch. It's a blanket stitch, but real tight together, so it comes out looking like a fan with an edge on the top. So I'm going to do those next. So I'm doing the modified blanket stitch still with 3 strands. You just catch it. Just wrap the thread behind it. And because this is clothing, I'm definitely knotting it on the back because it will go through the washing machine. So, okay. So now I just have one more flower to do. And I'm thinking this darker purple and a lot of French knots here. That's the plan. So I'm just starting off real simply, 3 strands. I'm gonna do 3 wraps on my French knots. I'm coming out in the middle of that spot. That was a big one, so I'm doing 3 wraps. I'm holding the tail here, part of the wrap. I'm going back into the same hole where I came out, and now I'm pulling the tail so it's not tight, but it keeps its shape. And then when you pull it through, it creates a beautiful knot. I'm just going to keep doing French knots across there. So I have the flowers done. I'm going in with the greens, and I have 3 shades of green, a dark, medium, and a light. And I'm going to start with some of the easiest stems to do. I'm going to start with these. I'm just going to do the split stitch. What I'm doing is a stitch, and then the second stitch I come back and I split the first stitch. You want to come down, just slightly down into where the previous stitch ended, split it, then come up. And I'm coming up about maybe a 1/4 inch. As I've been chatting away, I realized I could have been doing the leaves too at the same time, but I didn't. I'm going to go down and do the leaves or along the stem, but I love how these little leaves are below the flower petals. So I'll just work these leaves down and then come up the next one. So for the leaves, I'm just doing a lazy daisy stitch. And then I'll come back and I will do a couple of the 2 leaves that are right here. And now again, I'm at a thinner part of the denim, so it's easier to do that stitch. Okay, so now that I have that last leaf, or that right hand leaf done, I'm going to come back and continue my split stitch. So for this stem, I'm going to do a wrapped back stitch. So you start off doing a back stitch, which is basically you're stitching forward, and then you come back and do a stitch going backwards, or going to the back of where you're headed. So for a wrapped back stitch, I'm going to go all the way to the top of the stem. Okay, so I did a back stitch to the top here, and I'm just going to take my needle through, and you could go backwards actually if you don't want to catch on the threads, and you're just going to wrap it around. And what that does, see how you see like a dotted line with that back stitch? What this does, it hides that. So now it looks like a solid stitching, or solid line almost. And it's just, you just go down to the bottom here, and I have some leaves down here to stitch, but once you get to the bottom, you could just do a anchoring stitch down. And now you have this, actually a really pretty stem. Okay, so I have all the light green stems and leaves done. I'm doing now like a medium green, but what I'm going to do is a couching stitch. And I'm using this is 6 strands. And I'm going to take it pretty high up. I'm going to take it this far. So no stitching in between. I'm just going to, and this is a fairly big needle, so I'm taking it up there, and you can see it doesn't curve like the line does. So then I'm taking the same color but in 3 strands, and I'm going to couch it down. And couching is basically holding it in place, a long straight line. So I'm going to part the needle up here to keep it somewhat out of the way, and I'm going to, so there's a straight stitch, and now I'm going to go in with my needle and my 3 strands, and every, I don't know, maybe 1/4 inch, I'm going to stitch down or hold it in place. Okay, so the main 6-strand piece, the stem of that, isn't stitched down anywhere, it's loose, but it's the second needle that comes up with the couching stitches that holds it in place, that keeps it from moving and creates the curves where you need it, creates a straight stitch where you need it. I'm just following along and causing this the 6-strand floss to curve where I need it to curve. And the second one is just holding it in place. And I'm going to continue doing that for all of these branches. I'm not going to go up into this little area. I'll do that when I come back with the 3 strands. But right now I want to hold the thicker branch in there, or the thicker 6-strand floss in place. And again, this is the couching stitch. So now that I couched the 6-strand down and I'm up in this tiny area, I have my 3-strand shade of green, and I could just finish up this finer points or the finer branches with the 3-strand. I'm stitching now with the medium green, and again I'm going over some rather thick areas. I'm just going to keep going. Most of the leaves on these stamps were pretty thin and tiny, so I could do a lazy daisy stitch to represent the leaf. So for these wider leaves, I'm doing a leaf stitch, which is actually very simple to do. You do this like about, oh, I would say about a little over 1/4 of an inch vertical stitch. Come up a little bit to the left of that center stitch on it doesn't matter, but either left or right side. So let's say the left side, and you go back in at the base of that first stitch. Okay. And now you come back up on the right of that base stitch. So you come back up slightly to the right of that base stitch. And then you go back down just below the middle there. And I'm coming up slightly to the left. And go back down. So I'm just going to repeat this. Okay, I'm switching over to the darkest green, and I'm going to do this branch right here, and I'm going to do it by doing a wrapped back stitch for the main branch, and then I'm going to do lazy daisy stitches for these leaves. I'm going to do a back stitch first. So this time I started from the top and worked my way down. So I'm doing this bottom stitch. So normally, or in the past when I've done these other wrapped back stitches, I ended up at the top and I wrapped it going downwards. But this time I'm going to do my halfway stitch at the bottom here, turn my needle around, and now I'm going to wrap upwards. So I'm going to go underneath the first back stitch and just keep going underneath each back stitch and work my way up. And by doing this, also going in this direction, my needle will end up at the top, or I can start adding leaves up here. So I'm just going to end it somewhere up here, and then I'll come in with the, start doing my lazy daisy stitches for the leaves. I'm doing this plant right now, which is this. The leaves I'm going to do again are going to be these lazy daisy stitches. I'm going to continue with the leaves all along these little branches and just make this a cluster of flowers and leaves. This is the last leaf set that I'm doing, and they're really long leaves, so I'm going to do like a satin stitch. So basically coming in one long and then on each side a little bit shorter, just to do a long graceful stitch. I'll come back in. Let me just do this. So because those stitches are a little floppy, I'm just going to come across with one stitch in the middle just to hold that in place. So I'm back in the studio after finishing this project. We were on a camping trip. We had to cut our trip short because both my boyfriend and I came down with a cold or something, so I'm not feeling great, but I wanted to finish this project. So now what I'm going to do is soak it and get rid of what's left behind. So I have a Pyrex dish that I'm going to fill with warm water. It says to soak it and agitate it. I don't know how to agitate this in the shallow pan. Ooh, it's coming off beautifully. So my recommendation, I'm doing this in a pan in front of the camera for the shoot, but I think if you did this under a running faucet, it would actually work better, because right now all the adhesive is just floating to another part of the denim. But if you were to do it under running water, it would run off. And it actually comes off really easily. I'm quite impressed with that. I'm just running it, trying to get between all the little parts. And I think, from what I could tell so far, I think it's going to look so pretty once all the paper's gone. You couldn't see it as well with the Fabrisolve on it. Okay, let's lift this up. I'm going to go take it over to the sink and rinse it under water and get rid of all this loose Fabrisolve. So here's the finished project. All the Sulky sticky Fabrisolve has rinsed off beautifully. I did have to put it in the dryer just to get it dried in time to film this, but I love the way it turned out. My favorite are these little purple flowers. That was a lot of fun. So I just love the way it turned out. I think it'll be so cute. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for watching. It's been great. It's nice to be back from my trip and be back in the studio and filming this. So please check out my website, LyndaCreates.com. That's Linda with the Y. LyndaCreates.com for more inspiration and to see what else I've been doing. I especially love my slow stitching, and in this case this was a Stitch Your Stamp project where I take stamps and use that as an inspiration to create my stitchery on it. So thank you so much for watching. I totally appreciate you guys, and I will see you in my next video. Bye!